Here's how Nintendo's next console could easily turn disastrous. So what do we know right now? Well, the Switch itself has been on the market for over 7 years with 125 million units sold, which is absolutely gangbusters insane.
I'd have to double check the numbers, but I think that's 2 to 1 or more in comparison to the AK-47.
Okay, all right. That's real apples and oranges right there.
I mean, it's gotten to the point where you've probably known a couple of people who have owned several Switches throughout its lifespan. Like, I have a friend who is a Switch collector, and I don't just mean games. He owns 7 Switch systems. All the special editions, complete in box. He has them on display.
Yeah, it's also nice too because he's a bit of a Switch in his personal life as well.
Well, looking deeper into the Switch, let's get to the bottom of this. Tell me some more, Tony.
Well, as we all know, the Switch was popular because it was a hybrid console/handheld. The design was a huge hit, introducing innovation that the Wii U desperately lacked, and the Wii had in spades. Essentially, it is a fully realized version of both the Wii via its motion controls and the Wii U with its original attempt at a sort of semi-hybrid console. It was like they took those two things combined, refined it, got it right, and just made it convenient. And it just sold. As we know, the Wii was immensely popular. It came out in 2006, but it began to lull and lose a lot of pace in 2009. It's only about 3 years. Obviously, the HD systems were out. They were very popular. Things couldn't be ported very easily to the Wii, and there was just this long, arduous wait where Nintendo did nothing from 2009 until 2012 when it finally released the Wii U. So there was a lot of market share lost during that time. Sold so many units, but then just died real hard and stayed dead for a long time. If you haven't heard, the Switch successor, the next Nintendo console, is going to be released in the latter half of 2024. The Switch is still hot. It's not going to lose a ton of market share between now and then.
Yeah.
It's still hot, and then boom, you're going to get something new. You're not going to have this crazy long wait only to get the Wii U, and then have this crazy long wait for how is Nintendo gonna, what are they gonna do next?
And then the Wii U is like, well, here's your system. When will we get games?
Nope.
Yeah, you're gonna get Star Fox Zero.
That's right, you are.
And you'll get Breath of the Wild when the system's already dead.
I do think that the timing of this is very good, especially since as games get more advanced, it'll be harder and harder to port AAA games to the Switch. It's possible to do now with a lot of concessions, but as they continue to get more advanced, more developers, I think, aren't going to be really wanting to kind of port it down to the Switch, so it'll need a little step up to sort of do that process, where it's yeah, we're losing graphic fidelity, yeah, we're losing some frame rates, but it's still possible, right? It's still possible to do, but I imagine in 2, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, it's going to be a lot less possible to port, these big productions to Switch. A couple other details that we have. They said that it's likely going to be LCD instead of OLED to kind of reduce costs with the screen, and then it's also going to be cartridge based. But that's all we know.
Based on what?
Very based. Now, of course, we hope the next gen Nintendo system doesn't fail, but here's how we think it will. One of the things that I was thinking about when I was doing some brainstorming for this episode is that I realized Nintendo never really has released 2 consoles successfully in a row, with the exception of the NES and SNES. And
the NES was insane, especially for the time. And then the Super Nintendo still did well.
Yeah.
But you could tell it was a lot more split with the Genesis. But the 64 did not do that well.
It did not sell well at all. The GameCube did not sell well at all.
No, the GameCube was pretty bad.
The Wii did.
Ooh.
The Wii U didn't. So post the SNES, it's never had 2 good selling, well-selling systems in a row.
Yeah.
So for some reason, they just seem to not be not be able to do it.
Handhelds.
Well, yes, we're talking about consoles. I know this is a hybrid, et cetera, but
I think that's part of the reason it was so stable, is I think going with that hybrid handheld thing.
Yeah.
When I used to drive for Uber and Lyft, I'd put in hours and hours and hours. in between fares.
You mean
playing.
while you were driving?
Yeah, while I was driving, and they'd be screaming at me to put my eyes in the road.
But you'd be playing a racing game, and technically you were.
Yeah, it'd be like, shut up, you piece of shit.
Just keep playing.
I might have hit 3 people.
Again, we talked about power.
Bottom.
And you know that they're not going to do a full step up in power. It's not going to be like a PS5. They're going to go from the Switch to the successor. The current generation, PS5, etc., is up here. They need to. I think they need to chase that a little bit more. They don't have to reach it, but I feel like their jump in power isn't going to be enough. I feel like it's not going to be enough to sustain them. They're going to deal with this issue again in a number of years. I feel like it's putting a Band-Aid on it.
So what I would personally like out of the next Switch would be more of a focus on frame rate, which I know that the average reviewer will probably actually be like, these games don't look good. If it was people still sort of playing to the more minimalist graphics, like the actual way in which, say, like Breath of the Wild or Tears of the Kingdom work, is actually fairly clever in sort of like a minimalist, somewhat cel-shaded sort of thing.
Yeah.
But if you could try and play to that, but have everything more fluid, that would be what I would want.
Yeah.
But every reviewer is going to be like, doesn't look photorealistic enough, dude.
So next up, I think one of the biggest things that people are thinking about is whether or not it'll have backwards compatibility. And there's a couple different ways in which it could have backwards compatibility.
Yeah.
A couple different combinations of ways. Obviously, there's the cartridges, but there's also the online games, the eShop, the online service, right? There's a couple different ways that it could interact. But I feel like it may not have the backwards compatibility. I hope it does. I feel like it would be a huge slap in the face if it doesn't.
I think that would be insane for them not to do it. The mechanism for reading a cartridge is very cheap.
Yeah.
I think because it's so cheap to have a card reader, if they did do a new format of card, I don't think it would be impossible for them to do just 2 ports.
Okay. Totally,
it's
game.com it.
Game.com
it.
Yeah, like,
or Nintendo DS. I should have said that.
I mean, they already have an SD and that.
So there's a couple different ways in which the Switch could be backwards compatible. We talked about the cartridges, but there's also the eShop and, of course, the online service that you pay $20 a year for.
Yeah.
So to back up your games, you need to have the online service. So that would need to be compatible with the new console if they were backward compatible. So that would have to be the same online service or at least have an overlap there. So I think another thing that could possibly ruin the next console is a gimmick gone wrong. Now, Nintendo always has their gimmicks, especially in the last couple of years. Obviously, the Wii has the motion controls, the Wii U, the little gamepad thing, the Switch. It's a hybrid console with sort of, like we mentioned, features of those previous consoles. What are they going to do next? And will it be too confusing or just fall flat? Will they sacrifice power, which is what they need, for some gimmick that nobody actually wants? One thing to note is that the Switch actually had multiple gimmicks. You know, we mostly just talk about the versatility, but one of the gimmicks that completely fell flat was that sort of like haptic feedback with the controller. Like it was like a sort of a smart vibration. I can't remember what exactly they called it.
HD Rumble.
HD Rumble, yeah.
It felt great, and no one used it.
Yeah, so they did that 1-2 switch, the party game.
Yeah,
and everyone was like,
great with that.
It was like, oh, this is cool.
You'd be trying to figure out how many dice were in the cup, and it felt like you were holding a cup with dice in it.
But nobody cared after that. Imagine if when the Switch came out, instead of Breath of the Wild and like 1-2 Switch and like Bomberman, whatever, it had like 4 or 5 games that just hyper focused on the HD Rumble. A feature that nobody cared about. That would have partially killed the Switch's momentum at the beginning, right? So what if this new console has some sort of gimmick like that particular HD Rumble that failed, but it had enough other gimmicks to work, or like the Wii U whose gimmick completely failed.
All in on the IR sensor,
or it's like whatever it happens to be. Like I feel like that could possibly, a bad gimmick could possibly kill it. Like, so for example, remember how hard Shigeru Miyamoto wanted those motion control double screen thing in Star Fox Zero. They were like, this is the future. This is so good. And it was atrocious. What if Nintendo goes full Nintendo again with the new console and they do something like that at the beginning?
There's definitely going to be some big idea they're going to get hyper fixated on.
Likewise, but slightly tangentially, What I was going to mention, another thing that could really hurt this new console is the fact that Nintendo always kind of falls back to its old ways and rests on its laurels. When it has a very successful console, they want to do a successor to that console. So you have the NES, then you have the Super NES, and then, you know, SNES didn't sell as well, or what have you, or whatever. They were going in a new direction. N64, GameCube. Then they have the Wii, and then they're like, the Wii was sold like hotcakes. Yeah. Wii U. So are they going to do some sort of naming convention with this thing that confuses the audience?
Yeah, I also feel like every time somebody's had a real big hit, they get cocky.
You know, they'll have to be really, really clever with what they call it, if they include Switch in the name at all. I honestly don't think they will. But if they do, they'll have to be very clever about it, because people might just think it's a Switch Pro.
Yeah.
Rest in peace.
Switch
or
Pro,
like
Switch DX.
Yeah, or like a Switch OLED or something like that.
We'll call it the Switch S and the Switch X.
Yeah. Pretty much.
But it's a new system.
It's a new system. Well, you know, the thing is, too, like with Xbox, they could kind of get away with that because Xbox fans were still playing Xbox and paying attention to what Microsoft was doing with it. With the Wii U, a lot of Nintendo fans had dropped off in that big lull.
Yeah.
With the Wii, while it wasn't selling well, and gone either handheld with Nintendo or to other consoles, so they weren't really paying attention to what Nintendo was doing.
Yeah.
People come out with the Wii U, and then there's a disconnect because you're not like, you're no longer on the conversation. Yeah. It's like you're jumping back in. Wii U, wait, what is that? So that is all we have for today, but let us know in the comments below. What do you think will happen with Nintendo's new console? Will it sink or will it swim?
I hope swim.
I hope swim, but I'm just a little worried. Aside from that, we do have a reminder. We will be at the Detroit Retro Video Game Show on November 4th. It is a show/swap meet, tons of vendors, 1 million games approximately, and we will be doing a meet and greet all day. You can come say hi to us. We will have some prototype games set up that you'll be able to play. It'll be a good time. If you are in the Metro Detroit area, or even if you're not, come check it out for the games and, of course, to see us. All right, well, aside from that, if you are new to the channel, please subscribe, hit that notification bell, all that stuff we are mandated by law to say. And we hope to see you all back for the next one. Cheers. Mostly empty, but cheers.
Mostly, too.
Yeah.